Boker Tov, everybody. Okay, as I mentioned, welcome to class number 200 in our class on the Siddur. That does not include the classes on the Machzor. That's a separate class, so it's a little bit more. But since we started focusing on the Siddur, as I mentioned, I want to thank everybody. It's hard to believe, myself. And anyways, there's a lot to learn. Like I mentioned, I probably gained a lot more than anybody who listens. Whenever you teach, you gain the most. And it's really true. And just preparing, even if I just preparing, but all the questions, the insights. So thank you. And please keep me on my toes. Ask any questions and all questions and hard questions. And that's why we learn together. So thank you very much. Okay. We're getting to the end of Tachanun. So I just want to begin. Last week we were talking, we'll see, it's one of the major themes. It's all over the place. What are the Goyim going to say? And we're very concerned, right? I've mentioned many times that 2,000 years of persecution have caused Jews to be not so concerned what the Goyim have to say. Who cares? But it's clear the Torah, it's obvious from the first verse in the Torah, God creating the heavens and the earth, and he created man and not Jews. Avram's not till 20 generations. It's all over the place that we're supposed to be a light to the nations, and so much of the Torah applies to non-Jews. And we don't focus on that. I always say we don't focus on that enough, especially now that we have a state of Israel. I think it's even more important, Israel's relations with the world, etc. But we are very concerned. So I mentioned last week, I just want to show the source, even though it's very counter to the way we're all taught. And I'm not saying this is the dominant view at all, but it's important to know that this is a Talmudic view, that it's very important to proselytize. So let's take a look at the Gemara that I mentioned last week, just to see it inside, because it's, it's very nice. Okay, so what does the Gemara say? The Gemara says like this. Okay, everybody, see Psachim 87a. V'amar Rav Elazar, lo higla HaKadosh Baruch Hu et Yisrael. The only reason, lo higla ella, or whenever we use that expression, it was only done for the sake of. That's a very striking expression, because it's not like, okay, there were 10 reasons, and this is one of the 10 reasons. Lo higla ella. Now, obviously, there are a variety of reasons, but here he's focused on the main purpose, the overarching goal, that God exiled the Jewish people is not because of our sins and not because of Sinat Chinam and all the other reasons we discussed on Tisha B'Av and other times. Okay, but the reason God exiled that to the nations, could have exiled us, I don't know, to Australia, to where nobody was, who knows? In order that we should get more converts. The goal of exile is to convert non-Jews to become Jewish. Maybe you can give some other explanation, some far-fetched explanation, but the simple reading of the Gemara, there's no other reading of the Gemara that you should have converts. And the Gemara quotes a pasuk in Hosea, you should plant in the land. I guess here they're referring to ours normally land of Israel, but to all lands, klum adam zarek seil el echlis kamakorim. You plant in order that you should get much more. You plant a little, so you get a lot. So we were planted among the world, so we should get a lot of converts. And I think I mentioned that historians say that Judaism used to be a proselytizing religion, and it stopped or whatever. And that's of course, we know our tradition is that when a convert comes to convert, we give him a tough time. But though that does not necessarily contradict, by the way. The fact that we all know the Talmud says when somebody comes to convert, what do you want to convert? Are you out of your mind? And we basically tell him, so there are two things. First of all, we can want converts, but we want to make sure they are serious. In other words, Rabbi says, we're in exile to get converts. When someone comes to convert, you give him a rigmarole, not because we don't want him, but because we want to make sure he's serious. That's A. And B, you can also, it's what do we tell them, right? Anybody know the first thing we tell a potential convert? When a convert, according to the Gemara in Yevamot, I can show it to you if you want to. Maybe let's just talk about it for a few minutes. Where the Gemara in Yevamot says, when somebody comes to convert, what is the
tell them how much we suffered over the years?
Right, so very good. So the first thing we tell them, you're out of your mind, go see a psychiatrist. I'm paraphrasing. Why in the world would you want to be Jewish? Don't you know, since October 7th, everybody hates Jews. Anti-Semitism, persecution, we're we're just awful. Nobody likes us. So why do you want to be Jewish? And then what does the Talmud say? Yocheved, you know the rest of the Gemara?
Oh, no, sadly.
Okay. That's okay. He says, if he says, you know what, why don't I show it to you? Once we're on the topic, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but let me share my screen. I didn't prepare the source, but I'm pretty sure it's Yevamot 47a. And if it's not, then I'll just do it off by heart. But it's interesting to see. I think, listen, it's always good to see stuff inside. First of all, so you'll know you can believe me. Otherwise, don't believe me. And maybe I'm misinterpreting something. Okay, so the Gemara here says, let me just find it, 47. Okay. Okay, here we go. Tana Rabbanan, Rabbis and Gersha. So already you see this in Bisman Hazeh. The normal way, we want converts. This even actually, I didn't even realize it so much. This actually proves my point. This Gemara seems to say we really want converts. It's Bisman Hazeh. In our times, we give them a tough time. In normal times, when the Jews, when terms of, when everything's going well and we have our own country, Bisman Hazeh in the Talmud always means after the destruction of the temple. Like, what is Bisman Hazeh? Bisman Hazeh means post-Talmudic, post-Talmud times. There's also different ways we convert. When there was the temple, a convert had to bring a sacrifice. So if you made a sacrifice mandatory, we couldn't take any converts. So Bisman Hazeh also has sort of ritualistic or whatever implications. The conversion is different, but I think it's more ideological and philosophical. When Bisman Hazeh, the Jewish people are in a different state of affairs after the destruction of the temple, which is why we tell them, Mara ite Shabbat aliker. Why do you want to convert? And you don't have to know Hebrew, but just listen. Devuyim, Dechufim, Sechufim, Mutarafim, Visurim Balim. It's bad. We're weak and pushed and ripped apart and suffering. And Imomer, don't you know? Are you an idiot? Have you studied Jewish history? So Imomer, yeah, I know. I read the newspaper every day. I walk in the street. I see the Jew hatred. I see all the parades against Israel, genocide. I see it all. I'm not really worthy to be Jewish. To be Jewish, these people are amazing people. The dedication, their concern for the stranger, their tzedakah, their amazing chesed the Jewish people do. I'm not really worthy, but I want to be part of the people. Mekabli noto miyad. We immediately accept him. This bisman hazeh. We accept him. How religious is he going to be? I don't know. How many mitzvot does he know? I don't know. What does he know? I don't know. He maybe ever opened up a chumash in his life. Mekavlim oto miyad. If a non-Jew says, I want to convert, and I know the Jewish people are persecuted, I know it, but the Jewish people are amazing, that's it. You're in the club. Now we just have to let them, okay, you're in the club. By the way, it's like Nasav and Nishma. Almost like the Jewish people were it really is like Nasav and Nishma. And the way we interpret Nasav and Nishma, we'll keep the Torah. I don't know what's in it. You'll tell me what's in it. Whatever's in it is fine. Because again, there's not a halachic discussion, the technicalities. We all know that conversion is not like this today. That's not what happens in the real world. Question is, maybe we should change it. That's one of the big debates. Okay, but that's for another shir. But it's just fascinating to see the Talmud, just as it is without all the 1,800 years of development of how we apply this. And then the Gemara just says, you teach him a little bit. Make him, he doesn't have to have a test on or a Chaim. He doesn't need to know, he doesn't need to know Daf Yomi. He doesn't need to know Chumash Rashi. You tell him a little bit. Here's what it means to be Jewish. Mitzvah kalo to mitzvah chamurah. Tell him a little bit, some of the light mitzvahs, some of the heavy mitzvahs. Umadimo tamu, we tell him, the question are these two separate statements, or is this what kalaf echamur? Not for now. In other words, you can interpret. We tell him a little bit of the light mitzvah and the heavy mitzvah, and we tell him about lekat shichapeh. Is that the light and heavy mitzvah? Or no, we tell him that's separate, and every rabbi will sort of determine what it is. There's no fixed text. The only fixed things we teach him the importance of lekat shichapeh and masarani, which is unbelievable, which is all mitzvah of helping the poor. That's in the field. So it's to leave your gleanings of the field. If you forget something, leave a corner of the field, give a tenth to the poor. To be Jewish is to give tzedakah. God chose Abraham because of tzedakah umishpat, right? You should get, that's what it means to be the first thing. And you tell him a little bit, and then you tell him no more McDonald's. Before you were Jewish, achalta chelev. Chelev is a particular type of forbidden fat that has a greater prohibition than actually McDonald's, than pork. But okay, that's not really important for now. You tell him you eat chelev, you get karet. You were gonna last week you're going to McDonald's, pig out, eat whatever you want. I mean that. Pardon the pun. And to onish karet, you'll get. But today you're karet. Last week you chilata Shabbos. You want to violate Shabbos, no problem. To onish kila. This week, karet will stone you to death. So that's it. And then that's it. Conversion's over. And then, by the way, tell them whatever the punishment, the reward is much greater. Rewards are much greater than the punishments. And then, but I marvi malav. You don't tell them too much. It's amazing what the Gemara says. You're not too careful. That's so he doesn't know how to make tea on Shabbos. He doesn't he doesn't daven mincha every day. And you're not medaktik. You're not too careful with him. You tell him a Jew has to give charity. You have to fast on Yom Kippur. You don't need chametz on Pesach. Okay, that's it. Enough. Kibel, he accepts. Okay, then if he can opt out. Malino tomiyat. You give him a brit milah. And then if it's a male, obviously, and then you take him to the mikveh, and that's it. Over. The conversion's over. Nashim. So if you have woman converting, so you have to watch her. That's a big question today. Who should be in the mikveh? Okay, that's not for now. Anyways, just a fascinating thing. I don't know how many people have learned that Gemara before. Have people seen that Gemara before? I'm just curious if you've seen that, because it's really. It's really an astounding piece. It's very simple. That's the whole Talmudic piece. There's other pieces in the Talmud here and there, and obviously, if this was a halachic shir and I was saying much, there'd be much more to go into. But I will say that it is important to note that I don't know when this has come up recently, but that conversion standards, I think we all know, 40 years ago were much more lenient. I think I don't know if you know. We know Orthodox rabbis, good, upstanding Orthodox rabbis, accepted converts who they knew would not be observant. They knew they would not keep Shabbos, and they knew they maybe even not keep kosher. For sure, the woman wouldn't go to mikveh. And they accepted him. They'll join a shul. They'll participate. They'll be active Jews, like most Jews. They're not so religious, but and that was widely done. And the reason it was why, I mean, one of the reasons widely done, because what are your options? They fell in love with somebody. That's 90% of conversion. Yes, I know. Ideally, you shouldn't convert for love, but that's the real world. And if the Orthodox rabbi won't convert them, they'll go to Reform rabbi. And better the Orthodox rabbi convert them, and it's okay. You can rely on this. You're not so careful. They want to be Jewish. They identify as a Jew. Beautiful, very nice. That's good enough. And I don't have to tell you today. You have all these Orthodox rabbis whose conversions are not accepted in Israel, and whatever. It's for another time. But there are valid halachic views that a non-Jew can convert even though they're not going to be religious. What they can't do is say, in other words, there's a distinction between saying, I know there's the beautiful Torah, there's Shabbat, but it's not for me. Like, it's too hard for me. But I know it's theoretical. If the guy says, no, I don't believe in Torah, then there are limits. But if a guy, is like most Jews, I don't ask too many questions. Just don't ask too much. And then you can accept it. That view today is no longer extant. It doesn't exist. But that was the view of a lot of people with the Israeli army. Had we used that view for all the Russians who came, we would have solved a lot of problems. How we used Rav Moshe's view that a minor doesn't need to accept mitzvot at all. That if you convert someone on their bar and bat mitzvah, they can't accept mitzvot. So it's brit milah and mikvah are fine. You just have to give them the option after bar mitzvah to renounce it, which, in a normal family, you tell them they're not going to renounce it. Doesn't matter. They can eat on Yom Kippur. They can eat on Yom Kippur and they're still 100% Jewish. That's Rav Moshe's view. But unfortunately, the Israeli rabbinate wouldn't accept that view. It would have solved all the hundreds of thousands of Russians. So who cares? The parents weren't Jewish. The mother wasn't Jewish. But the kids would all be Jewish. That's what we wanted. When the Russian gave, no. That's for... anyways, conversion is complicated, but it's also simple. I'll mention just one more thing just to show you how. And I know what I'm going to say now. I know Rabbi Soloveitchik had tremendous... He couldn't believe it. Like, he couldn't accept this. But Rav David Tzvi Hoffman, it's in print. I've seen it in print. I don't. Rav David Tzvi Hoffman, who was the leading rabbi, the leading posek in Germany at the turn of the century, died in 1921, the head of the Hildesheimer Rabbinical Seminary after Israel Hildesheimer. He headed the Rabbinical Seminary. He was the first person to write a response to Wellhausen and biblical criticism. I have not read it. It's in German. I think it's been translated into Hebrew, but not into English. And it's a subject that doesn't really interest me very much. But he was the first serious rabbi, like serious, like rank one, like Rav Moshe Feinstein, that level of rabbi. And I mean, he died in 1921. But he wrote a response, and he was the leading posek. So he converted. A Kohen is living with a non-Jew, and then they decide, let's be Jewish. So they go to the rabbi, let's convert to them. Well, we all know that a Kohen is not allowed to marry a convert. So by definition, the conversion already, the guy's telling you, I'm not going to follow this mitzvah because he's wanting to convert. They're going to continue living together. And he explained why he did the conversion, why it's because they'll go to Reform Rabbi, and this way we'll keep them in, and so they won't be total riches. Better something than nothing. Okay, enough of that, but I just think it's important to point out it is a sort of view that we don't hear too much. And of course, the idea that we want to encourage converts, there is some people, I think Chabad, I'm not really sure, you have to ask them, are they into teaching Sheva Mitzvah B'nai Noach to non-Jews? I don't really think so. They're really focusing on not observant Jews. But there is something to be said for going out and if not converting them mamash, at least teaching Jewish values. Okay, let's get back to Tachanun. But as we'll see in one moment, we're very concerned with non-Jews say, and we want to present Torah in a beautiful way. And then obviously non-Jews are going to want to come. Okay, so let's continue now. Let's finish up. We were saying that part of Tachanun right after we fall on our face, Vayomer David, before Shomer Yisrael, we say these 5 paragraphs. We said last week, it's like Slichus. It's got the refrain, Hashem Elohei Yisrael, Shum Yechor Nefecha. You can see it used to be an alphabetical acrostic, but we only have the Hey, Zayin, Chet, Kuf, stanza. We've lost, like so many of our slichot. Remember, there's no printing, there's no nothing. It's got lost all the time. But and we say the refrain, Hashem Elohei Yisrael. So we went through the first couple. So let's continue. I think we got up to Chus Hashem. So let me share my screen. We'll go back to see Tachanun inside. Okay, I better start saying. By the way, it's almost Purim. It's so I mentioned the Purim Yom Iyun next Sunday, and also Parshat Shkalim we read already this Shabbos, and of course Purim. V'Rabbi me'amei haaretz mit Yahadim. That's a pasuk in Megillah. Many Rabbi mibnei haaretz. Many of the people in beyond Shushan and 126 other provinces were mit Yahadim. It's like a made-up word. Mit Yahadim. We're becoming Jewish. That's it. Purim kimu v'kiblu. Not only did the Jews have a rededication to the way the rabbis understood. It's not in the Megillah, but the way the rabbis read between the lines of the Megillah, the Jewish people rededicated themselves to Torah. In the Megillah, it says that thousands, Rabbim, I don't know the number, but many, 75,000 Jews were killed in battle, and they don't say that's a lot. So I don't know, maybe more than 75,000 people converted. Okay, let's go on. Chusa Hashem Aleinu Barachamecha. God, Chusa, have mercy. So I do not put us in the hand of achzarim, in mean people. I find this interesting. It's one thing when if they take a hostage because they want to get money. I don't know. I'm from the era. I remember still. Patty Hearst, I remember Patty Hearst. I don't know why. I always talk about whenever I do teach and chat about kidnapping. Of course, none of my students have heard of Patty Hearst. Patty Hearst was the daughter of some publisher magnate, and she was kidnapped by the SLA, one of these army things, a guerrilla, Bandorf mine. I forget which gang kidnapped her. And of course, she's the prime example of the Stockholm Syndrome. Where the hostages begin to identify with their captors. And of course, if you remember, she participated in 2 bank robberies. She went to jail. I think she's still alive. She did tshuva, as far as I know. She's back to a normal life. But anyways, so if they kidnap you because they want to get money, okay, I get it. They can treat you nicely. They're not mean. It's wrong, but I get it. But sometimes people are cruel for the sake of being cruel. That's what Achzar means. God, it's one thing, people don't like us, whatever, they want us to suffer. We rejected Jesus, who knows what, but don't let them be mean to us. Now, I found something interesting here. There's sort of, we go along in a worse and worse. So here we start. What do we say? Okay, we were put in the hands of Goyim. Then we were put in the hands of Zarim. Zarim means the strangers. The Zarim, the non-Jews, they say, there's no hope. Okay, but worse than a Zarin is an Achzar. Achzar is he's just mean for the sake of being mean, and then worse than that is an Oyev, and then we go beyond Oyvenu. In other words, in each paragraph, we're asking God to protect us from some type of non-Jew, but the non-Jew is getting worse, as we'll see in a moment. Like the Oyev wants to wipe out Judaism. The Akhzar, it doesn't say he's wiping out Judaism. Everybody, different enemies have different goals, what they want to do. Let's say, for whatever it's worth, Christianity, the church always taught that Jews shouldn't be killed. Now, it wasn't followed through, but the whole theology of the church is that Jews have to live to show evidence what happens when you reject God. So Jews have to suffer, be second-class citizen, be degraded, but they shouldn't be killed. Unfortunately, you can't teach people that. People then take it. But and yes, I'm not again discussing what the church itself follow that policy. That's not our issue. But theologically, the Catholic Church did not believe in the murder of Jews. That's not true about ISIS and radical Islam. They do believe in the murder of Jews for the sake of killing them because they're more evil. What can I say? You've got people who are Zarim, where we're foreigners. They don't like what we do, so they want to they tell you they become Christian. There's no hope. Let's say it's not specifically Christian, but this is written probably under the influence of Christianity. We mentioned already the Sephardim have a different Tachanun. So this Ashkenazim, this is under Christianity for sure. So the strangers say, the Christians say, you guys, your God forsake you. There is a second coming. There's a New Testament. Give it all up already. There's no hope. And we say, God, no, there is hope. We're going to have. So that's a very different attitude towards people who are mean to us. And then they say, God has forsaken you, which the Christians also say, but I just think it's an extra level of suffering. So we ask God in this paragraph to do it for your own sake. Don't delay. I love that expression. In other words, God, no, 2,000 years, it's too long already. Why should a non-Jew say, where's your God? And of course, that's Rav Soloveitchik. Famously, we don't need Rav Soloveitchik for this, but the state of Israel is one of the responses to this. That's one of the knocks that God knocked on the door and God has woken us up. And after 1948, Jews can say God hasn't forsaken us, especially after 1967. I don't know. It's hard to know. I'm very wary of saying what happens, is a symbol of God. It's very, very dangerous. First of all, we've had more suffering. And so what do I say about October 7th? We always should look inwards. But anyway, but clearly, we on the one hand, you have to see, I'd say, on the one hand, it's very important to see God's hand in history. That's what a believing Jew does. God, the God of nature, the God of history is one. On the other hand, it's beyond arrogant. It's maybe bordering on evil. It's bordering on terrible hubris and terrible thing to say, I know why this happens. Right? All the things that the Talmud, first of all, is the prophets who normally, so a prophet can say, this is why God's doing something. But we have no right to say, because of this sin, this happens. You have a right to say to yourself. I've mentioned many times when Rav Soloveitchik always said, we Jews don't ask the word lama. We don't say lama. Why? We don't know why. We can never understand. Why the Holocaust? Why this? Why that? We don't know why. Lama. We can ask lima. And remember, there are no vowels in any Hebrew text. Lima. Lamed can we read lama? Why or for what purpose? So when there's a tragedy, what's the purpose? And I believe, I think I said it this year on Tisha B'Av, when the rabbi said, they said many things. The most famous thing they said, the second temple was destroyed because of Sinat Chinam. I went over, for those who listen to my shiur on Tisha B'Av, I don't expect you to remember. I barely remember, but I went through at least 10 different There's seven in Shabbos. There's one in the Darim. There's one in Bava Metzia, one in Yuma. The Gemara gives different reasons exactly why the second temple was destroyed, which already tells you they have no idea. Of course, how can they have any idea? When you have 10 reasons for something, it means no reason is good. We all know this from Rashi. The Chamalivitz made this famous. When Rashi gives two answers, it's because neither are great. Each answer has a problem, and A has a problem, so he gives answer B. But B has a problem, so you need A, you need both. So it means we don't know for sure. We give two. If you have a good answer, one answer is good enough. You don't give second. So when the Talmud says 10 reasons, the most famous one that we all know is Sinach. But obviously the rabbis didn't know. They don't claim to know. What the rabbis are saying is, what message shall we learn from the destruction of the temple? So the most important message is Sinach Chinam. Because if you study history, you'll know that during the Second Temple period, there was a civil war among Jews. We were killing each other. Literally, we're killing each other, not figuratively. Jews were killing each other. And the Gemara goes far to say that the Biryonim, Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai and his brother-in-law were on opposite sides. Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai was what we call today, I'll get into trouble for saying it, but what else can I do? I'm sorry. Take it metaphorically. Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai was a member of the Labor Party or Meimad, which doesn't exist anymore, or Peace Now. That's Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai. He gave up Jerusalem for peace. That's Meimad. And the Biryonim were Ben Gvir. They were going to fight. We don't care. We don't care about anything. And the Biryonim went so far, and that was his brother-in-law. The Talmud says, it could be an exaggeration, doesn't matter. There was enough food for the people in Israel to survive for 21 years under siege. And the rebels, the Jews, burnt the food, so forced the Jews to fight. So anyways, whatever. So the rabbis saying this, you know why? Maybe we should learn it's not worth a civil war. It's not worth the fighting. Maybe in 2026, Jews should learn, don't demonize people who are on the other side. We can disagree, we can argue, we can believe our opinion strong, but don't demonize anybody. And unfortunately, we haven't learned so much. And that's why we have lots of problems. But it's not God's punishing us. It's very important. I think that's a very important distinction, because the prophets can tell us. We can say the first temple was destroyed. Now we can say God gives a message. The first temple, idolatry, adultery, and murder. The second temple, we don't know. We have 10 reasons. Some say because we didn't do Lifnei Mishur Hadim, which is the same idea. By the way, the Yerushalmi says, it's connected, but anybody know what the Yerushalmi says, why the temple was destroyed? Anybody want to take a wild guess? Because we loved money. Ahavat Mammon. The Jewish people loved money. Wow. It's scary. Nothing changes. I mean, listen, money's important. There's nothing wrong with that. But when you love money, whatever, it was too materialistic, the society. And of course, things can be, depending on where you live, and we all know that. What's the biggest problem facing Judaism? Well, it depends if you live in New York, if you live in Australia, you live in Israel, and in Israel, everybody has the community you live in will have certain things. If you live in, I don't want to start naming communities, so day school tuition is not such a big issue, because everybody's a millionaire. It's not a problem. A millionaire today doesn't help, but everybody's a multimillionaire. If you own a house, you're a millionaire. But whatever. And that if you live somewhere else, and here it's shidduchim, and here it's the jobs, and here it's the war, and everybody's so that's why. So that's you can have 10 different rabbis giving you 10 different. Not reasons, 10 different ideas we can learn from the destruction. Okay, so anyways, but let's get back to Tachanun. This is all, but what we'll do, so on the one hand, yes, when it's good for the Jews, obviously God is showing favor, but to directly link, sometimes God shows favor when we're not worthy, and sometimes God, when we are worthy, still won't show favor. We don't know. All we can do is we can perhaps take a message for ourselves. Lama, what can we learn? But never say lama, because you did, and it's always what they did. We're suffering because what you did. It's never what I did. We're suffering. That's okay. You know all this. I'm not telling you anything. I mean, think I'm not telling you anything you don't know. I hope, whatever. Okay, let's get back here. But so Achsarim. So why should they say, "Where's your God?" The man chasei manu chesed. God, for your sake, again, over and over again. It's for the sake of God. When we suffer, it hurts God because we're the representative of God. And don't delay. Anashu mechor chav rachem. God, return from your anger. From your anger, I get it. We do lots of bad things. There's good reason to be angry. Rachem Segula, the Yam Segula, we mentioned last week, the treasure nation. Okay. The last words. Kolenu tishma b'tachun. Hear our voice. That I said already. So we're moving. It's a higher level. An oyev is like a real enemy. Limchot et shmenu. Wow. They want to wipe out our name. Like Haman, limchot, to destroy. Like Amalek. Zachor et asher nishbata lavatenu. So God remembered what you promised our forefathers. Wipe us out? No way. We're going to be like the stars in heaven. How many stars are there in heaven? We have no idea. I don't think. Do scientists have any clue how many stars there are in the universe? I'm sure they don't know. We haven't discovered all the galaxies, have we? I don't know if my little knowledge of physics, the world is still expanding, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. The world is still expanding as we speak.
Approximately 2 trillion galaxies.
2 trillion galaxies. And how many trillions of stars in a galaxy?
I don't know. Each galaxy is about 10,000
we're in the Milky Way, right?
Each galaxy is about 10,000 light years. Go figure. I can't even imagine.
I mean, it's really I mean, it is unbelievable. It's like beyond belief, right? We're in the Milky Way galaxy. I'm trying to remember my high school science, right? And that's I don't know what's the nearest galaxy. I mean, the star is like when a little pitcherless, a nothing sun. I mean, I'm sorry, the sun is a nothing star. Just happens to be the one star that's only 93 million miles away from Earth, and without it, we wouldn't be here. But I'm assuming this is an exaggeration. So, in other words, the Goyim want to destroy us, but God, you promised we'll be like the stars in the heaven. Well, if there are 25 gazillion trillion millions, so you're never destroying us. And we're few from many. Now, I just realized again, I told you I love davening Friday morning because Chazarat Hashatz, I sit there and I prepare, I have my notes, and then I sit on Friday morning and I read over Tachanun, like the few paragraphs I'm planning to discuss like 15 times, what new ideas can come. So I like when the chazan takes a long time on Friday mornings. But okay, so this just hit me. I actually had quoted the pasuk, but I didn't realize what I think is the deeper message. Where does this verse come from? God, remember, it's not an exact verse, but it's a paraphrase. Remember what you promised to our forefathers, or to our fathers. So most people, myself included, where are we going to guess? Where does it come from? No one wants to guess now. I scared you. I got it wrong too, so you don't have to feel bad. Okay? So we're going to say Abraham.
No, promotion.
I'm sorry?
Moshe's Tefillah b'Cheder Egel.
Excellent. It's Cheder Egel. Let me read Zechor. Remember, now God didn't we don't have this pasuk in the Chumash exactly, but Zechor d'asher nishbata k'chokvei hashemayim erbe'ad zarachem. I think maybe I'm wrong, but it's pretty. I don't know any other verse that's closer than this verse. If you find one, please let me know. That'd be great. So this verse, that's what we're saying in Tachanun. Now, why is that significant? We're saying here Kolenu Tishma, because what happened at Cheder Egel? At Cheder Egel, God wanted to destroy the Jewish people. I think this is so poetically beautiful. We take a verse where God was going to wipe out that's what God says. And Moshe pleaded with God, right? I told you, God, this is where the Gemara says here, it's a pasuk right there. I forget already. Maybe it's here. Let me just find it. Batahanichali, yeah, right. We mentioned it. This is, okay, Bayomer, God says to Moshe, the Jewish people are really stubborn people. And Batahanichali, you leave me alone. God tells Moshe. In other words, Moshe is clearly arguing with God, right? I mean, we don't know what happened. God says to Moshe, your nation, Moshe is your fault. Your nation is destructive. they're blasphemous, they're terrible. That you took out. It's very interesting, right? All the praise, God, right? What do we say at Pesach? Ani v'lo malach, God, not Moshe, nobody. But here, when the Jewish people say it, it's like funny. It's like the way we would talk. Like God, Moshe, it's your people. When you took them out of Egypt, I didn't take them out of Egypt. I didn't take out these people. I took out people who would appreciate me. You took them out of Egypt. You're Lita, Me'eretz Yisrael. Surah Maheret, they went so quickly from the path. Here, I can show you the English too, just if you want to find it a little easier. Surah Maher Min Derech, they went away from the path that they built a golden calf. Wow. So they're really stubborn people, stiff-necked people. Leave me. What do you mean leave me? So the Gemara interprets that I told you. If this verse wouldn't be written, be forbidden to say. That's how the Talmud says. Says what? That Moshe grabbed onto God's shirt. That's what the Gemara says. It doesn't say shirt. He grabbed onto God. God, leave me alone. What do you mean leave me alone? Because you're holding me. So obviously that's anthropomorphism. But the Gemara says, I can't say such a thing, but if it says so in the Torah, I can say it. Leave me alone, and I'm going to destroy them. So Moshe davens, Vayecha Moshe. This, it's interesting when we lane on this is where they're laning for every fast they start. Vayecha Moshe. We don't say these verses. I don't know. I guess the rabbis didn't want us to say these verses. They want to start with Moshe praying. I find that kind of interesting. We don't want to point God's anger. We don't want to start with that. So we start by Moshe. Now, obviously, the people who said of they assume that the average, I think they assume that the average Kamashur would know these verses. But I don't know how true that is today, that people know what the few verses are before Yechal, but be that as it may. And God and Moshe uses, don't, you promised us that you'll make us a great nation. We're going to be like the stars in heaven. So this is exactly what's going on here. So in here, so the Goyim want to destroy us. So we take a pasuk where God wanted to destroy us, like we flip it on its side. I think it's so purposeful. Kolenu tishma, limchot et shemenu. That's what God wanted to do. He wanted to wipe us out. And Zechor, so the same way you remembered when like you didn't wipe us out, don't let the Goyim wipe us out. It's just like if you want to wipe us, you could have wiped us out by the sin of Lugabi. You chose not to. Because remember, so don't let our enemies wipe us out. I don't know. I think again, it's so exacting that they chose this verse or this idea. Why they didn't quote it exactly, I don't know. And then if we continue, Avatani Sharna Matmar, we're few from the many. So in the overall context, when we say this every day in Tachanun, means many Jews have been killed over the year. And assimilation also, we're like 14 million Jews in the world. Like, come on. There were at the eve of World War II, there were 18 million Jews and 2.5 billion non-Jews. And today there are 8 billion non-Jews and 14 million Jews. Something's really wrong here. I mean, obviously the Holocaust was what's wrong, but it's more than that. Since the Holocaust, there were 12 million or so in 1945, and we're 14 million today. That's like pretty crummy growth rate. So it's because assimilation, whatever. So Batani Sharna Matmar, we're few from the many. So don't forget. And nonetheless, we don't forget you. It's like almost a rub to God, like almost. It's like basically chutzpahdik. The same way Moshe grabbed onto God. So we say, God, God, you let us be massacred. We still didn't forget about you. V'chol despite what we've gone through, Shimcha lo shach, we remember your name. Don't forget us. Amazing. Don't forget us. Now, in the context of the sin of the golden calf, you want to explain the sin of the golden calf, so that's even, I think, more powerful. We are now, right, again, I think, of course, this is being used not as the sin of the golden calf, it's being used in general, but the context is the golden calf, so let's understand it on that level. So how many people were killed in the golden calf?
3,000.
3,000. Good.
Yeah.
So what percentage of people were killed?
Very few.
Less than 1% of the men, or 600,000 male, 20 to 60. So there are more. So 3,000 is like, it's terrible, but it's like almost nothing. I mean, almost nothing. When you're as a statistical, you shouldn't even talk like this, but that's what we're saying. It was really nothing. By the way, how many people were killed in the War of Independence for Israel? How many people were killed in the War of, how many people were killed in the War of
So
Independence?
1% of the population.
Correct. 6,000 out of 600. It was also 600,000 Jews. Interesting. I never thought of that really before. I don't know. God works in mysterious ways. Just like Abraham was born, everybody knows. Abraham was born in what year?
1948.
Of course. If you look in the Chumash, Abraham was born. This is like, if you didn't know that, then smile. Okay. So Abraham was born in the year 1948. Obviously, it's a different cycle and it could be meaningless, but who knows? God says strange messages. I don't know. Abraham was born in the year 1948. I wouldn't bet my house that means the Mashiach's coming tomorrow. But it's interesting that Abraham was born in 1948. So there were 600,000 Jews in 1948, and 1% were killed. I don't mean to minimize, but this war from October 7th. So about 2,000 people have been killed, 1,200 people on the October 7th, and about 800 soldiers, I don't know exactly since, about 2,000 people have been killed. So 1/3 of the people from the 48 war, when their population is about 12 times as much. So the impact of this, and this war has so traumatized the Jewish people. I mean, there are other things that have happened. I understand that. It's not just, but because none of us remember the War of Independence, so we don't know how terrible it was. But it's just what can I say? I mean, I don't know. But nonetheless, we say that's few from the many. But so the same thing, 3,000 from a couple million. So it's a little bit higher, right? But it's still very little. And yet for Jews in the context, that's where only a few people left. We used to be a lot of people. We used to be 603,000, right? 603,550. That's the first count we used to be. And now we're only 600,000. That's like we're very few. It's like a powerful statement that, 3,000, every one person, one human being is a whole world. We save one life, you save an entire world. But we know the world doesn't work that way. But so we lost 3,000 people out of 600,000 plus. And yet we're just a few people. I don't know. To me, I just find that a beautiful idea how the Jewish people, like every life, it's not like the cost of war. Okay, 3,000 people, that's still very little out of the whole population. No, we don't talk like that, right? As Rav Soloveitchik always says, you give up Jerusalem. Rav Soloveitchik was also in the same party as Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai. It's a good party to have. Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai is a great leader. I would join his party too. And Rav Soloveitchik said, you give up Jerusalem to save one Jewish life. Rav Soloveitchik then said, it's up to the military generals to decide, is that safe? Maybe you give it Jerusalem, it'll be more dangerous. But if the feeling was it will lead to peace, the idea that land is more important than people is, I'll say it's heretical. Okay, maybe I don't know if the Rav went that far. I'll say it borders on heresy to say that land is more valuable, as we're going to see hopefully before today's class ends. Okay, so God, we didn't abandon you. Okay, now we come to the conclusion. Okay, so we did our 4 paragraphs with the right Habeit, Hey, Zayin, Chet, Kuf, right? We did these paragraphs with the sort of slicha reframe in the middle, Hashem Elokei Yisrael, Shu Mecharonecha, which is also from Chet Egel, of course. We discussed this before. That in the reframe, God, again, we're invoking Chet Egel, so it makes a lot of sense. They quote psukim from Chet Egel, because that's the whole point. God was going to wipe us out, and He didn't. So don't let the Goyim wipe us out. So that's why we're invoking this, I think, in this verse from the sin of the golden cow. Shu Mecharon Becha. And then we conclude as Reinu Alei Shenu Levar Kavod Shemecha. This is what the Chazan says out loud, so everybody knows this verse, right? Okay, where does this verse come from? Anybody know where that verse comes from? Let me say hello to everybody, right? Anybody know? Good, it's good. See, okay, I don't want to put you on it's amazing. I also, how many times have I said this verse? So I skip Tachanun sometimes, Nissan, and then if I come late to shul or something. So, it's one of the first things everybody gives up, Tachanun. So maybe I only said this 40,000 times. I don't know how many times. I don't say it in Milcha, the shul, they don't do it in Milcha, whatever. Okay, but I also had never looked up the context of this verse. So, okay, Azreinu Hashem, let's just translate for a second. God, Azreinu, help us. Elohei Yishenu, the God who saves us. Al Davar Kavod Shemecha, it should be the honor for your name. V'atzilenu v'chaper chatotenu, and save us and forgive us, Yom Kippur, Chaper Chatotenu, Leman Shemecha, for the sake of your name. There's a different, we'll get to maybe Kvod Shemecha and Leman Shemecha in a minute. What's the difference between the honor? I don't know if I'll get there today, or Leman Shemecha. I don't know how significant it is, but I think there might be some significance there. Okay, so with this verse is the concluding verse of Tehillim 79. Okay, where it says, here it is, Tehillim 79, Israel Hashem Berkovich Mecha. But let's take a look at Tehillim 79 from the beginning, and you'll see pretty amazing. Mizmor la'asaf ba'u goyim nachlatecha. A song unto Asaph. He was the time of King David. He was one of the Levim in the time of King David, whatever. It's sort of prophetic because the temple hasn't been built yet. We'll see how the rabbis understand this pasuk. The non-Jews, goyim, have come into your domain, into your nachala, however, whatever your inheritance in the temple. That's how it's understood. Timu, they defiled it, and they destroyed Jerusalem. Samu Yerushalayim le'iyim. So already you see, right, again, the Noim hurting us. That's what Tachanun is, save us from the goyim, right? This is the editors of the Siddur were not just taking that verse, they took one verse from a whole Mizmor, but the Mizmor gives a theme to understand what the verse is. It's the concluding verse of the Mizmor, so it embodies what the Mizmor is about. They let the corpse, they didn't bury the corpse, the Gemara says by Beitar, let's say, and let the animals eat them. Shafchu damam kamayim, we know this, our blood flowed like water. Sivot Yerushalayim, around Jerusalem, there was nobody to bury them. Hayinu cherpa, we were like disdained, made fun of us. The neighbors, those stupid Jews, God forgot about you, those idiots. They were, you're right, God has abandoned you. Adma Hashem tanaf l'netzach, right? God, come on, enough already. Don't be angered. Taver kamo eish kinatecha. Yes, we may do idolatry, right? We said in the Ten Commandments that God is a jealous God when we worship other gods, whatever that means. But okay, enough jealousy already. And then we say a verse we all know. We're now at the Seder. The Seder is only 7 weeks away, Pesach, okay? Have your anger on the Goyim who did not know you. So this, now you know where the Shvach HaMatzah comes from. We say this in Slichos all the time, right? Do not remember our early sins. Quickly, again, remember, say Al Tacher. We said, God, very quickly have your mercy because we're very weak. And then we say, as Reinu so that's the notion of where this as Reinu. So when you say it again, just think of it. So when you're saying this last part of dealing with this part, we of course our minute we only say Mondays and Thursdays, so you've got to think already of slichus, of cheda. Forget the words, just the context. You're thinking of this refrain of slichot. You're thinking of the cheda egel. We're thinking about anti-Semitism. We're thinking about Mizmor Ayin Tet, that the persecution of the non-Jews crying out to God, and then we just conclude with Ezreinu Elishenu. Now, I said I would join Rabbi Soloveitchik and Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai's political party if they had one. You know, I'll tell you a little, I don't know if it's a joke or not. Who remembers Meimad, what Meimad was? So Meimad was the religious Zionist peace party. Tova Lichtenstein, Rav Amital, there was a party that started for religious Jews, deeply religious Jews, Zionist Jews, but believed that we should make peace with the Palestinians. We should try to make peace. And there was, I think even, was Rav Amital ever in the Knesset, if I'm not mistaken? I think maybe
for a short time.
I'm sorry?
I think for a short time.
Yeah, maybe with Peres. I think Peres might have appointed him something. But so my kids say as a joke, so what Meimad never won a seat in the Israeli. They ran for a few elections as bandit, they never won a seat. And so my kids would say to me, my kids learned in Gush, and Gush, I think, I heard the story, Tova Lichtenstein didn't run officially because she didn't want to give up her American citizenship, because they have a rule now in the Israel, if you get appointed to the Knesset, you cannot be a dual citizen. That was the anti-Meir Kahane law. And then he gave up his citizenship anyway. But so that's what I heard. I don't know if it's true, but it makes sense. But so they said that Meimad proves that there are lots of religious Jews who are on the left who believe in making peace. It's not a defunct thing. Religious Zionism has been taken over by the right wing very much. So it exists, and it also proves there are not enough of them to get into the Knesset. So whatever. So, anyways, what can I say? Okay, that's a bad joke, a good joke. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's a bad reality. I don't know. Okay, so let's go here. Mizmor Lasap. But you'll see something where Rosh Soloveitchik gets this very Jewish idea. Mizmor Lasap Oyelim Goyim V'Nachotecha. A song unto David, unto Asaph. Non-Jews have entered into your temple. Really? Mizmor Lasap? So let's take a look at the Gemara in Kiddushin. Makes no sense. So this is a Gemara talking about Kivud Avayim, honoring parents. It's in Kiddushin, that's where the Gemara talks about the mitzvot between a son, parents to children and children to son, right? The parent has to teach your child 6 things. Your swimming is the last one. And then you have here and the kid has, of course, Kivud Avayim and more of it. So the Gemara, the topic of Kivud Avayim is in Kiddushin. Talk about marriage also, but Amar Ravok. So he says like this. So Ravavo says that Avimi, who's not so famous, he had his kids were great. He trained his kids had great kivrei kayem mitzvah kibbutz. They did this mitzvah. Chamisha b'nei simcha havelei lavime. He had 5 sons. And it's v'chiyavi at the Ravavo. And when Ravavo would say and he'd call by the door that he's coming, Rahid Avazil Patak, they would run to the door to get them. Ravavo. Okay, Avimi was his son. I'm sorry. Avimi is the son of Rabbi Yavo. When I would come to the door, they would run to the door, and they would, before they got to the door, they would say, I'm coming. Like the doorbell rings, so I'm coming, because you want to let them know. That's okay. That's maybe not so impressive. Maybe it is. Yom Echada, one day, he says, I want some water. It wasn't like today. You go to the kitchen, get water. You went to the well. 15 minutes there, 15 minutes back. You had to fill up the well. They ran out of water in the house. So go get water. So it took him a while. He fell asleep. He didn't come back 10 seconds later. So Gachin the so the son waited there, holding a cup of water. For the second the father wakes up, he'll give him a cup of water. That's pretty amazing. He could have left it on the table and gone to do his own stuff. No, he waited till his father woke up, who knows how many hours. It's Yasei Milta. So God helped him. So what's the guy going to do? So he was learning Torah. Well, what is he going to do? He's waiting for his father. The Daresh Avime, and he came up with a drasha. He came up with the interpretation of Mizmor LaAsaf. He began to understand this Perik in Tehillim that we say every day, and we say Azreinu El Yeshenu, that we say even not on Mondays and Thursdays, because that's the conclusion of this part and the conclusion of Shomer Yisrael, right? We say Azreinu El Yeshenu, we always say that, right? That's how we always end Tachanun. So he understood, he figured out what it meant. So what do you mean he figured out what it meant? So let's take a look at Rashi. The Gemara doesn't explain. Gemara doesn't explain. So if you look at Rashi, Rashi explains. So God helped him to figure out. He was helped, right? He was aided. But Odo Gachin Lefanav, while he was waiting for his father to wake up, Shehevin, he began to understand b'midrash mishmor achad shebesefer Tehillim. He understood a chapter in Tehillim that he never understood before. Shelo hayam mevin b'kodem. He didn't understand it. He really didn't know what it meant. I mean, he knew what the words meant, but he didn't understand its meaning. The door showing, so he understood it. What was so hard to understand? In other words, either the whole Mizmor, Rashi said the first line, that was problematic. Mizmor la'asaf ba'okoim nachlatecha. A song unto Asaph, the Goy, hey, let's dance, the Goyim are destroying our temple, fantastic, let's make a party. What are you, crazy? Kinot, this is Kinot, this is Tisha B'Av. What are you saying? Mizmor. Kinot mevayle. This Mizmor makes, so he never understood what that meant. He said it 40,000 times in his life, however old he was, and he never figured it out. Except while he's waiting. In other words, the Gemara is trying to say that if you honor your parents, I mean, that's the context of the Gemara. He was honoring his parents, and that God helped him. Such an important mitzvah. God will give you long life. What's long life? Torah. Torah is long life. So God helped him with Torah. I don't know. That's how I'm interpreting it. But Darish Bekach Shamar Shira. No, he sang. Shekilah HaKadosh Baruch Hu Chamato B'avanim Veitzim B'Beito. You know what? It's great. Because you know what God could have done? He could have destroyed the Jewish people. Baruch Hashem, he only destroyed the temple. Kilach Chamato Be'etzim, sticks and stones, the temple, the temple shmemple. Stick the Jews and people are sinning, the sacrifices are worthless, they're corrupt. Who needs a temple? We need to go to Yavne with Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai to recreate new Judaism. We corrupted the first one. Sinat Chinam, right? When we talk Kach, Hotir Shleifta Yisrael, and there was leftovers. That God was really angry. We were really terrible. God was going to wipe us out, and God said, you know what? I'll wipe out only the sticks and stone. She'il malei kach, if not for that, if God, it's very anthropomorphic. I mean, but I'm just quoting Rashi. I'm not, if not for this, lo yishtaner mishone yisosri, nobody would left in the Jewish people. Wow. And so now you know why. Now you know why the practice is as well. We can sit on the chair on Tisha B'Av in the afternoon, because in the morning we can't sit on chairs. But at they announce, 1:26, Chatzot, everybody gets and sits on the chair. Why? Because that's according to the Talmud. The temple, the Romans set fire to the temple in the afternoon of the 9th. In the morning of the 9th, God's deliberating. Maybe I'll wipe out the Jewish people. They're a bunch of sinners. And the afternoon, no, you know what? There's some great Jews. They have hope. They're compared to everybody else, they're still very good. They're my people. I made a covenant with them. I can't destroy them. Got to do something. Okay, temple, who cares? We'll wipe out some sticks and stones. Amazing. So we're a little bit happy. It's an unbelievable art. But this is, and you understand that where the quote unquote peace camp comes from. Yeah, if the temple's not worth Jewish life, who cares the temple? The temple's very nice, beautiful. We're not ready for the temple yet. When the Jewish people are doing everything else we're supposed to do, then we can worry about the temple. So anyway, so that's, I think, a very, very powerful idea. And that's where it comes from. And again, means more or less up. I know anybody want to disagree with me. I am happy to hear any questions or comments, but that's the way. So this is what we say every day, everything. Yes, Susan.
Now, I've heard that so many times that Hashem took out his anger on sticks and stones, but you forget that 1 million people were killed.
I was correct. Correct. That is correct. So I think even more so, it proves the point. God was really angry. He didn't assuage his total anger with sticks and stones. He got 80% of his anger was taken out on sticks and stones. And you're right. Josephus says, 500,000 Jews were killed in Beitar. Right. A lot of Jews were killed. It was like a Holocaust, Kimat. I don't know if it was a third of the Jewish people, but it may have been a fifth of the Jewish people or a tenth of the Jewish people who were wiped out in between the Bar Kochba result in the year 70 for sure. So nonetheless, because he was klaya, remember Rashi says there would have been nobody left in the Jewish people. Ein achinami, you're right. Yeah, 1 million Jews got killed. It could have been worse. It's astounding, Mara. Okay, anyways, what can I tell you? Again, I don't want to, it is not political at all. This is just, means more or less up. We want God to take out his anger as a sticks and stone, but it's really, the message is much more important. That's what all the rabbis were saying. That's what Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was saying. We don't need a temple. A temple is beautiful only if we're ra'ui for that. And that's what the prophets say. Yeshayahu, Amos, Micha, Yirmiyahu. God doesn't want your sacrifice. Yirmiyahu says, and the Chamaliva says a whole article on this pasuk in Yirmiyahu. God didn't command you to sacrifice temples. See, Yeshayahu says God doesn't want your sacrifices because you're corrupt. You're not taking care of the poor. Okay, I get it. But Yirmiyahu goes a step further. He says God didn't command you to bring sacrifice. Of course, he commanded us to bring sacrifice. So no, he didn't command you to be this type of sacrifices. The prophets sacrifices are only if everything else is online. Anyways, that's what I'm saying. Okay. It's getting late. Just to do a quick review, and if I have any questions, I don't have to teach today. We have a midwinter vacation. It's President's Day. No, isn't President's Day on Monday?
Monday.
Not where I live, and it's
Monday.
not Prime Minister's Day either, and for sure not Governor's Day. We don't have governors, despite what some people say in the United States.
Family Day here in
Family Day. Yeah. So they made a new holiday, Family Day, and then the schools, but most of the schools give off the Thursday, Friday, also a family day. Okay, anyways, let's just do a quick review and see if you have any questions. So we started with the proselytizing Gemara, that the Gemara says, or proselytizing, that I think I mispronounced it, that the Gemara says that we're put in exile. Ella, the only reason we're put in exile, we're very, this is a very class, very, the non-Jews, no temple, like all the sort of things we think opposite of, that we're put into exile to collect converts. And that doesn't even have to contradict the Gemara, that we give converts bisman hazeh, in our time, a hard time, because even though we want converts, we want to make sure they're serious. And the Gemara says the most important thing for a convert is to identify as a Jew. That's how Rav Soloveitchik always said. Mitzvot, of course, are important, but before you get to mitzvot, you want to be Jewish. Identify as a Jew. The Jew who walks around with the Magen David, the Jew who's proud for Israel. So they're not religious. Okay, we have work to do. But Baruch Hashem, they identify as a Jew. That's the first most important thing. And that's really why a lot of these rabbis did conversions of Jews who they knew with non-Jews, whatever, Jews who would become not religious, because they identify as Jews, they want to be part of the people, they're not religious yet, maybe they'll send a lot of the rabbis would say, okay, they knew they wouldn't be Shomer Shabbos, but they would insist that they would promise, you can't force it. When they have kids, they'll send them to day school. And we know they do. I mean, where I go in Toronto, most kids in the day school system are not Orthodox. I teach in Chat, 1,400 kids in Chat. How many kids are Shomer Shabbos in Chat? I don't know. I don't know if it's 100. It's probably less. Okay, there are religious schools too. There are yeshivas too, but they have 200 kids, not 1,400 kids. All the religious school added up together in high school in Toronto don't have 1,400 kids. I don't think. Maybe with the Haredia, maybe 1,400 kids combined. And then there's all the elementary schools. So Baruch Hashem, quote unquote, non-observant, not fully observant Jews go to day school. So that's it, but that's what the Gemara says. And then the first things we teach them are leket shichrapeya, masarani tzedakah, kashrut and Shabbos. I forgot to mention, of course, there's another allusion here. Leket shichrapeya is Ruth. Ruth is the first convert. I mean, there's an allusion. How did Ruth become Jewish? She went to the field to collect lections, and Boaz took care of her. But that's also that we're reminding ourselves of Ruth when we have that first idea of what to teach about converts. And we said conversion standards today are very different, and there's not a halakha shir on conversion, but it's important to know that there's many opinions out there, and for all kinds of reasons, those opinions today are either non-existent. I was just listening, somebody told me I was listening to, it was in Hebrew, I listened to a few of them, Rav Elazar Melamed, I'm sure, right, you know the name, the Pnei Halacha. Who knows of the Pnei Halacha? Just a quick show of hands for those who have their screen on, right? Who hasn't heard of the Pnei Halacha? I'm not embarrassed to say so. It's okay. You don't have to be embarrassed at all to say so. The Pnei Halacha is Rav Elazar Melamed. He lives in Har Bracha. It's become almost replacing the Mishnah Brura, I would say, in the religious Zionist world. I think he sold 1 million copies. It's the most popular halakha work in Israel today, I think. He writes very clearly. He throws in sort of a little bit of Jewish thought. He's got like 20 volumes. So he recently put out, I haven't read this volume yet, a whole volume on Geirut. And he wants to bring back this much more lenient position that used to be dominant in the Jewish world. And now as so there's his son-in-law and somebody else are having have a whole bunch of a podcast where they discuss the issue, and as they said in the first one, "Achshav zeh mivutal." It's not just a minority opinion; it's bitlu et deya hazot. They in the mainstream revenue, it's like the opinion doesn't exist anymore. So it's very interesting. Rabbi Melamed, so that's I think one of his they're trying to bring back this sort of more lenient view because we have 400,000 Russians in Israel who are not halachically Jewish, and that's not a good thing. We want to make them halachically Jewish, but they're not going to become Shomer Shabbos. They're just not. So what do we do? Okay, anyways, but it's a big issue. Okay, then we got back into the Tachanun. We said there's the stanzas. We go from Achzar, Oyev, Goyim, it's one thing. Azar is Nunu Azar, not so bad. A stranger, okay? A stranger, but then he becomes an Achzar, becomes mean, that's worse. He becomes an Oyev, becomes even an enemy that's much worse. And then we have the enemy wants to limchot, that's the phrase, to wipe us out. And we say, God, don't let him wipe us out, because that's the sin of the golden calf, right? They take the verse from the sin of the golden calf, where God was going to wipe us out. Very powerful idea. Moshe convinced him not to, whatever that means. The whole thing, I don't know what it means. But on our level, this is what it means. Moshe convinced him not to. So if God, you didn't wipe us out for the sin of the golden calf, don't wipe us out for this. And the same thing, they destroyed in the temple. He took out his anger on the sticks and stones. And we end up at this prayer that God should save us. He should redeem us, forgive us. And that comes from the Mizmor that says, it's all about how the Goyim are persecuting us. We ask God, take out his anger on the Goyim, not on the Jews, even not on the temple one day, not on Israel, not on sticks and stones. Take it out, your anger on the Goyim, because they're worse than we are, as ever bad as we are. We look forward to the day when Jews and non-Jews will recognize, I mean, our view today, which is, of course, you don't have to be Jewish to be wonderful. You can get to Olam Haba, you don't have to be Jewish. Jews, we're in the same team, Jews and non-Jews, to recognize God. Everybody should recognize God. Jews have one mandate and non-Jews have another mandate. A non-Jew wants to be part of the Jewish people. Okay, bisman hazeh, we make it hard. Why do you want to be an idiot? But the truth of the matter is, the Talmud also says in the time of David and Shlomo, they didn't want to accept comes because it was too good. In other words, when things are too good for the Jews, people want to hook on, like the Arab left Egypt. Oh, it's good. I'll join the bandwagon. When Jews are suffering and somebody wants to be Jewish, then he's more serious because he's out of his mind, right? Right. Okay. All right. We'll stop here. Please God, see you next week. As I mentioned, for those who weren't here, we have our Purim Yom Ayun. I sent out the login, plus our 14 classes next week also, I believe. And as I always say, the Yom Ayun login is a different login. So you do have to register again for that class. It takes 30 seconds. And okay, any comments? Well, I don't see any comments in the chat box. Yes, Marty, nice to hear from you.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't know if this made it across the border. Have you heard about Brett Stevens' speech last week?
Anybody hear of what last week?
Brett Stevens made a very...
Oh, Brett Stevens. Jog my memory. I may have read an article of his recently.
He gave the annual state.
Oh, yes, I heard about it. Yeah. Yes. Brett Stevens, yeah. Brett Stevens, who of course was editor of the Jerusalem Post many years ago, writes a New York Times columnist. So he's what you would call a liberal. He's quite liberal, but he makes a liberal case for Israel. He's a big supporter of Israel, right? So he spoke and he criticized the Jewish community for putting too much efforts into Holocaust memory, and we have to put our money into education. And he criticized the ADL. And what's his name, Joe? Who's the head of the ADL now? I forget his name. He was sitting there in the audience. He said, "We're good friends, but I think they're making a mistake." And the ADL guy responded, "Yes, we're very good friends, but I disagree." Yeah.
Brett and I happen to be friends, so.
Oh, you're friends with Brett Stevens.
So.
Oh, very nice. Okay.
At some point, I got to write him into. I'm very negligent in writing him, so I'm going to write him about this speech. But,
Yeah, I read about it, but yeah, but thank you. Yeah. Jewish education, that's it, of course. The future of the Jewish people. I mean, I am, this is not my area. I don't know, Holocaust education is important too. The question is, I think his argument is it hasn't helped. Look what's going on in the world today. All the efforts we put into Holocaust education just isn't helping. So let's put all that money into Jewish education, because that will. That we have research. There is research. We know that Jewish education means kids don't intermarry. There's clear evidence of that, and the evidence for Holocaust education working is much less. It's probably not an all or nothing like everything, but I don't know. Yeah,
it's also he the editor of Superior magazine. Have you heard about Superior Journal? It's a Jewish journal, and the publisher of Superior Journal is a Torontonian,
Who's that?
Mike
Mike?
Chernoff.
Oh, Mark
Mark,
Cherndorf.
yeah.
Right. Right. So he's working in Jewish education and stuff. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Jewish education that's what Torah Motion's all about. Jewish education. I don't, but we're doing mainly adult Jewish education. Yeah. Torah is what keeps us alive. That's Kihem Chayenu V'Orach Yameinu. Of course, that's why we learn. That's Torah keeps us not even as like a reward from God. It just that's what makes us who we are, Shabbos and Kashrut and whatever, all that. Of course, Talmud Torah. Yeah, I don't know, but yes, I did hear about what you mentioned. Thank you about Brett Stevens. That was at the 92nd Street Y or something you spoke. They have every year. They have like somebody give like a State of the World Jury, a State of the Union address. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Thank you. Okay. I wish everybody Shabbat Shalom. And okay, we'll see you soon. Thank you very much. Be well.
Shabbat shalom. Thank you.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. And another 200 down, another 2,000 to go. Who knows how long whatever. Okay. That would be pretty amazing. But okay. Shabbat Shalom.
We're looking forward to it.
Thank you. Thank you. Me too. I have to learn. I never knew Australian was Tehillim 79. This is like terrible. How could I not know that? I don't know. I didn't know that. Whatever, because I never taught the siddur, and it's not the priority. Like whatever. But when you see it in context, it just puts the siddur. Wow, you see where the siddur is coming from. It really adds so much to their davening. But okay, what's the Pure magazine? I don't know what's. Oh, that's what you're talking about. Okay.
The prayer is it was stuck. It comes up 4 times a year.
I'll take a look. I'll Google it and see what it
It's
says.
called
Okay.
and it had it's a magazine, but they also do lot of Zoom events with the people to read the articles.
All right. I'll take a look. Thank you. Okay. Shabbat Shalom.